Why does history, that great scroll of human action and intention, seem to spin like a wheel caught in mud, circling back to its former shape again and again? Empires rise in glory and fall in flames. Revolutionaries become tyrants. The oppressed rise, overthrow their chains, and then forge new shackles for the next generation. Ideologies morph, rebrand, resurrect, but the violence, the ignorance, the betrayal, the hope, the resurgence, they all return, always cloaked in new garments, speaking different tongues, yet driven by the same forces. Are we blind, or are we trapped? Perhaps it is not forgetfulness that brings us back to old mistakes, but a deeper design, something woven into the very rhythm of our existence. The past does not vanish, it echoes. And each echo carries with it the distortion of the original. A war once fought for liberation becomes justification for another war, this time waged in the name of preservation. A hero once celebrated for uniting the people is remembered differently by those whose voices were silenced. Every monument casts a shadow, and within that shadow, the seeds of repetition take root. It is not that we do not learn, it is that we do not change. Learning alters our knowledge, but rarely our nature. And history is not written by the past, it is lived by the present. The idea of progress, the dream that we march forward, generation by generation, toward enlightenment is a comforting illusion. It gives meaning to the suffering, it redeems the chaos. But what if progress is not linear? What if it is circular? What if the human condition, with all its contradictions, fears, desires, and longings, is a loop we cannot escape? We build, we destroy. We love, we betray. We hope, we despair. Again and again. The context shifts, the costumes change, but the core remains. The ancients understood this. They spoke of eternal return, of cycles of time that do not advance, but repeat. The Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, was not just a symbol of self-destruction, but of eternity, of recurrence. Time was a circle. The seasons do not progress, they cycle. Life, death, rebirth. And perhaps human civilization follows the same path. We believe we are evolving because the details shift, because we carry smart devices and launch satellites. But our hearts are still tribal, our minds still ruled by myth, our actions still driven by the same primal urges as our ancestors. And so we repeat, not because we are cursed, but because we are patterned. The loop is not imposed on us, it is born from us. It reflects our inability to integrate the lessons of the past into the identity of the present. We remember facts but not essence. We glorify history or erase it, but rarely understand it. And understanding requires more than memory, it requires transformation. Without that transformation, we are bound to orbit the same fate, century after century, era after era. History repeats not because it forgets, but because it remembers. It remembers through us. Every time we act from fear, from pride, from vengeance, we reawaken the old forms. Every time we close our eyes to the suffering of others, we write another chapter in the same story. The loop is not mechanical, it is psychological, and the world outside only reflects the world within. If there is a way out of the loop, it must begin there. Not in revolutions of government, not in systems and slogans, but in consciousness, in the awakening of the individual to the patterns they embody. To recognize the loop is to step outside it, even if only for a moment. But most do not wish to see it. The loop offers familiarity. It is known, predictable, and there is comfort in the repetition, even when it is painful. To leave the loop is to enter the unknown, to step into history not as a character, but as its author. But the author must be free from the illusions that bind the loop together, the illusion of separateness, the illusion of control, the illusion of permanence. The loop thrives on these illusions. It feeds on them. Every us versus them, every belief in destiny, every refusal to question inherited truths, they all tighten the loop script. And so most remain bound, walking the same path, speaking of change while resisting it, pointing fingers instead of holding mirrors. Those mirrors, though, are the key. When we dare to look into them, when we trace the contours of our own choices, we begin to unravel the thread that stitches us to the past. It is not enough to know that history repeats, we must ask why we allow it to, why we participate in it, why we protect the very narratives that ensure the loop remains unbroken. It is not only leaders and tyrants that fuel the cycle, it is us. In our apathy, in our clinging to comfort, in our refusal to face the raw contradictions within ourselves. The loop is seductive. It offers the appearance of progress while ensuring stasis. It allows us to believe we are learning while keeping us locked in emotional habits passed down for generations. It tells us we are moving forward while quietly circling back. And so even as our tools advance, our inner worlds remain archaic, tribal, fragile. Our wars may now be digital, our boundaries may be marked in code, but the fear that drives conflict is ancient, primal, unchanged. We've crafted myths to explain the loop, to give it names, to wrap it in fate or prophecy. But the truth is less mystical and more intimate. We are the loop. Our collective psyche, wounded, fragmented, and clinging to stories that no longer serve, generates the repetition. Until we confront those stories, until we rewrite the scripts etched into our cultural and psychological DNA, the pattern will hold. And time will not be a path forward, but a carousel spinning in place. Yet, there is something beautiful in the very possibility of change. That even a single human being, awakened and aware, can fracture the pattern. That awareness is contagious. That questions are more dangerous to the loop than answers. That curiosity, humility, and compassion are acts of rebellion against the ancient inertia. The loop cannot withstand true awareness. It requires forgetfulness to persist. And so the act of remembering not just the facts, but the feelings, the failures, the wisdoms long buried becomes sacred. Each person who wakes from the loop changes the pattern, even subtly. Every act of empathy ripples through time. Every refusal to hate in the face of provocation weakens the wheel's momentum. Every honest look in the mirror cracks the illusion. The loop is not a prison unless we accept it as such. It is a pattern, and patterns can be broken not by force, but by insight. So we stand, not at the edge of progress, but at the center of a spiral. And the question is not how far we've come, but how deeply we are willing to look. The loop will persist as long as we avoid ourselves. But if we turn inward, if we begin to trace the roots of our actions to their silent origins, if we become intimate with the shadow within, we might just find the key. And in that moment, not only history but humanity itself may begin, finally, to change.